Hello and welcome to my craft room. My name is Sue and I appreciate you watching my video today. Today was a little bit different in the fact that I took an embossing folder, an Anna Griffin, I think this one's called Garden Roses, and instead of putting it on colored cardstock or instead of ink blending over the whole thing to get the pop-up image, I decided that I want to color the roses and the leaves. And I wanted to do that with my alcohol markers. What's nice about embossing folders is there's actually two sides. There's the sides that is, you can't really see on here. I'm not very good at photographing this, but it's a raised, so the leaves are bumped out. Well, if you flip it, the leaves are now recessed with the veins of the leaves being recessed, and the leaves are depressed into the paper. Now I did emboss this on 110 cardstock from Reflections. I find that if I'm going to do embossing, I want a thicker cardstock so that it doesn't rip the paper as it goes through, because I do have an Anna Griffin Empress machine, which is very strong and it goes through like butter, but it gives such a deeper impression that sometimes it could rip the paper if it's not heavy enough. So this is the 110. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to color in the depressed area, and then I'm going to also color in the bumped up areas with the alcohol markers. A little bit different. I didn't want to, because if you ink blend, it's hard to get just the one colors and the flowers. So I wanted to try with the alcohol markers. Now I am doing this with Copic, Spectrum Noir, and Ohuhu markers. Because I'm doing them in yellow, I wanted to do 3 different colors, and I have a lot of different roses in here. So I felt that if I do the different colors, I'll get a variation in the garden of roses. So the first one I'm going to do is with the Spectrum Noir, and I'm using LV1, LV2, and LV3, which is, or LY. I don't know why I said LV. It's LY. So those are the colors that I'm going to do, and the lightest is L1, LY1, then medium, and then the dark. So that's how I'm going to start with the first flower. Like I said, so the L1, I'm going to go ahead and use that in the depressed areas, just the sunken. What's nice is since it's depressed, you can kind of butt up right against it, kind of get the edge that way. Now I'm not worried about if I hit it on the top part, because I'm going to go over that with the darker color. Now this embossing folder works really well because the items are large, the image is large. I found that when I did this with a smaller embossing folder, sometimes the brush nibs on the alcohol markers actually is too big to fit in those little spots. So I have used the Prismacolor pencils instead for this, instead of the markers. If you find that your embossing folder is just a little bit too small of an image. But for large images, this technique is pretty awesome. So you can see that was the light color. Now I'm going to go in with the dark color, LV3, and for this I'm going to go on the bumped up sections. It's just another way of using your embossing folders instead of doing the ink blending or colored cardstock. Gives you another option to just be a little bit more creative in it. Now what's nice is once you do the bumped up, you could see what areas you missed. Now I'll take the LV2 and just kind of go in the center of the rose where it would be the darkest, or a little more darker than the outside. Doesn't really do much, just adds a little bit of shading. Back to LV1 to kind of blend it out. one thing that's nice, another nice thing about this technique is if you color on this side and you decide that, oh, okay, if you flip it, you've got the image on the other side filled out the opposite way. Kind of a neat way if you happen to like that better than when you color this. Just kind of gives it a different look to it. So that's it for the Spectrum Noir pens. So I'm going to put those away. I'm going to take the Spanish orange Prismacolor pencil and just outline. Now, one thing with going with the depressed, the pencil just follows all along the edge. It just kind of gives it a little bit more dimension. Just kind of go into the middle. I hope you could see that okay. So now we'll go in and do this rose. And this has a little bit more shading by the bumped up sections. So this one I'm going to go ahead and use the Ohuhu pens. And I have the three colors I have are YO30, YO50, and YO80. And since these pens are newer to me, this is like my good chance to swatch it in real life. We swatch the cards that come with it, but it's nice to see it in actual, and that's what I've been doing. My last video, which I'll link, is where I did the greens on a green bow. So I have the greens, and then this will be some yellows. It's just nice to swatch your pens. So you can see the difference between the Spectrum Noir and the Ohuhu pens in the color difference, which is kind of neat for this technique because I wanted the roses are all different in your garden. They're not all the same, which is what I was doing today. I was pruning up some of my roses. As you can tell, I am so scratched up. The Ohuhu markers have a softer nib than the Spectrum because those were not a brush nib. You can see on so that's the Spectrum Noir, and then this is the brush. So it's a little bit different when you're going to color. If you have the brush, it really flows inside here a lot easier, and you can really see the upped up version better. Now, is that a leaf or is that, now this is part of the flower. Sometimes I feel when you do these stamps, you have to have a horticulturist degree to figure out how the flowers are actually growing. I think that's part of the green leaf because it's coming off that stem. So I'm going to leave that green and just go with this part of the yellow. So that was the YO30. Now I'm going to do the YO80, which is the darkest color. Can't really see the names of those, can you? There you go. And just do the, now you can see this color is a lot darker than what I have for a lot brighter. Back in. So once you put the dark color on there, you can kind of see where you missed because it leaves those white spots. So you can see it a little clearer after you do the dark. And again, when you flip it over, you've got another version of the color if you want. Now I'm going to take the 50 little shading back to the 30 to just kind of blend that out. I hope you get a chance to try this technique. It's definitely different because you're not ink blending and you actually get to use your own imagination of what the flower would look like. So here I'm going back with that Spanish orange. Is that what it is? Yeah, Spanish orange. And go back and just outline the flower. I'm just doing the outside on this one, not the inside, because I was able to do a good shading between the two. So I'm just going to do the pencil on the very outside of it. Oh, it looks like I missed a So now I want to go in and I'm going to go, and there's a little bit of a rose down here. So I'm picking the yellows from Copic. Now I don't have as many, but I chose the lemon yellow for the light and then the Napoli, I don't know, is it Y19 for the dark shade. So we should see a little bit of a difference here, a different yellow again. Now this is a lot brighter because that's all I have. You can definitely see the difference of the three yellows. Like I said, you can do this with any embossing folder. I think it needs to be a bigger image so that you could color inside these images. Otherwise, it could get a little difficult to get in there and you'll see that as I get to the greens, it gets a little more difficult to get into the tiny spots. And so I think for this little guy, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to do this one in the Copic as well for this little one so that they're next to each other and not too far apart. And if you have all the Copics or you have a whole set of something, you can, I'm sure there's other, you can mix and match a lot of the shading colors. And oh, I bet this would be real pretty with a red rose as well, especially if you're doing this for Valentine's Day. This would be great as red rose. And I think in spring, it's like a happy spring card. Pretty background for a card, and that's all. And then if you want, like I said, there's the back. So if you don't like the front, you just flip it over, but I like that. Now we'll go ahead and do the greens. For the greens, I'm doing the Ohuhu markers, GY1 and GY3. So the GY1 is like a pale green, and the GY3 is a bud green. So my goal is to do the lower section in the pale green. See how that comes out. Again, with this embossing folder, the leaves are quite large, so it leaves room for the brush nib to get in there. You can see where it's a little harder to do the brush in the parts of the stem of the, this is where I think you just have to be forgiving of yourself, that it's okay if it's not perfect, because it's very hard to get in there. But it's such a great technique if you finally do make it work. It's just the same technique as I did for the yellow, I'm doing for the leaves. No different. And then for the green, I chose the Prisma, was this grass green, and figuring that that would go around. Like I said, the pencil just flows around the edge. Now if your pencil is pretty sharp, you can get into the areas that are, kind of gives it a little bit of a, but I noticed that if it's too skinny, I don't know if you could see that, but the pencil worked pretty good in the really skinny areas, and you may want to go in and do that versus the green. Let's try this one here again. And just like the yellow, the other side has the softer green if you want to do that. So as you can see, it kind of gives it that watercolor look. And then we just have to go in and color the rest. So that's how it looks all colored in with the white. And again, it's obviously I don't color perfectly. That's my goal for 2024. It's to improve my coloring with the markers and take my time more. I try to color very fast, so I miss a lot of spots. Well, that was a fun video. I know it's not perfect, but the technique is fun to try, and with all the embossing folders I have, I'm sure I will be practicing this more and more. It is one that we can just really play with all of our embossing folders and give them a new look and a new idea for using them. I hope you enjoyed this, and I look forward to having you in my craft room for my next video.